is the first feature film from Cronnenberg, who joins the family business in the directors of horror films, but is it worth checking out? Hey everyone, welcome to Cinema, where we focus on the film. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema. Let me know in the comments below if you've seen Humane, or if you're checking out this review to see if it's worth the time or not to rent it or see it in limited theaters. So just give all your thoughts down in the comments below, like this video if you enjoy it, subscribe if you're ready to join in this film culture community, and let's get right into the synopsis. When the world is in an environmental collapse that forces them to get rid of 20% of the population, the announcement from a father during a family dinner to enlist in a euthanasia experiment leads things to go awry as things play out in something way they didn't expect. So starting off with a positive, overall, I'm not too familiar with a lot of the Cronenberg's films from Brandon Cronenberg or David Cronenberg. I have watched a few, The Fly and whatnot, but just generally going into what Cronenberg brings to the table is a good directorial debut in some sense, just by the basic standards of what you're getting. You're trapped in one location for most of the time. You're obviously going out sometimes, and your introduction to the family is good enough for how you're setting up the boundaries. There is an aspect where you hate some of the characters, the general gist of how you're setting up the boundaries of what is going on is set up in a decent way that sets the stakes to a certain standard and has the general enlistment to the idea of the lead up to the mystery of what the father is going to announce and everything that is leading them to the family gathering together. As they have been aware, they haven't met very often, and there's suggestions where they're not necessarily getting to know each other even as a family too much based on everything that is leading them to be there. And generally going throughout, once there are certain announcements and ideas where the story starts flowing, you get the amount of suspense and tension where you don't know what is going on based on something I'm not going to spoil, of how certain things disappear, and that leads certain things to lead up to other things in the environment that they're leading up to that brings something different to the story that I didn't necessarily totally expect. It doesn't feel naturally outside of the realm that I haven't seen anything like this before, but it still has a realm where it handles the situation well and effectively. It has some suspenseful moments, goes to places that really brings some jarring moments to the table, and something that really holds on my attention to what the screen has to offer by the moments throughout, and the characters, how they handle each of them having their own personalities and making sense of what they're all after. And going into some of the mixed elements, ultimately this film is familiar with some genre based on how it's going about. It feels familiar to Knock at the Cabin from last year, if you've seen that, and a few ones along the lines where it's sort of post-apocalyptic and not necessarily providing the answers to what all is going on in the background scene. You're not getting too much to what is leading outside of the family, and so just generally you may disregard that and just really dig into the environment that is happening within the family on screen, because it is a one situational moment that really works wonders to what it is generally going after, even if it doesn't go to a whole shebang with some complex plot exploring the ideas that they're going on within what is causing the world to go astray, the environmental collapse and all that. But just going into the negatives, overall, generally, with this film, while it does have its good offerings, it never had a high where it really popped out, and there's certain character motivations where you don't necessarily see where they're coming from, because there's also hateable characters in one sense, in some regard, where you generally can care for them as humans because of the situation going on at hand. But there's disconnect between how you're building up these characters, noting all of the negative aspects of their quality as a way to persuade them to join the enlistment, that makes it So you're not necessarily focusing on the positives, what makes them good people, or something to love. And while they have that defense, it's not necessarily always the focus. It's up to defend yourself from being part of the listman, which pulls it out into a negative direction that I'm not a huge fan of. It pulls off a few strings that goes about different ways that doesn't necessarily explore the whole environment in a way that I would love to, because it traps you within this environment, doesn't go and expand outside of the environment once you're done with the film and once you're done with the main story. And once you're going to the end, I'm not a huge fan of how it ended and how it all pulled off all its antics, and the general idea that you're getting from the film as a whole just doesn't have the best vibe. Even if you can generally get the gist of what it's going for, it doesn't feel like it's ultimately going all the way with what it could be offering to the screen once you're really getting the general gist of who's getting killed or how things are going about, and just the different technical flaws with writing, how certain horror aspects to the film just don't amplify things to its fullest extent. And so that's just my personal review on Humane, which I have to rate a personal 6 out of 10. Let me know down in the comments below if you've seen it, what you think about it, or if you're going to see it or not based on what I provided in this review. So that's just all. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.